a.m. Cat 4 storm. This is Thursday. Again, starting to see those conditions deteriorate. It makes a very close pass around the Melbourne area or north and east of that on Friday morning. Again, if it makes landfall, it doesn't make a difference. I mean, it's just so close to the shore. If it moves even 20 miles to the left of that, that could mean the difference between 50-mile-per-hour winds and 120-mile-per-hour winds. So that's going to be crucial. And then, look, we're still dealing with a major hurricane up towards Georgia and then South Carolina, Cat 2 storm. And then this is what Harris was talking about, which is, of course, is going to be a topic of discussion. And it all has to do with the upper level winds. There's a trough that's helping to guide this northward. There's high pressure in the Atlantic that's going to help sort of recurve this and maybe squash it down. And then we might see a recurve of a tropical storm. But again, the main message here is we're dealing with a storm, one of which the east coast of Florida perhaps has never seen. We haven't had a major hurricane hit anywhere across the U.S. in 10 years, meaning Category 3 or higher. And not only are we going to see 6 to 9 foot storm surge with this, that's the push of water with the counterclockwise winds along the coast here. We could get anywhere from 8 to 10 inches of rainfall, isolated amounts of over a foot, and of course those destructive strong winds. GFS model, we look at both the GFS and the Euro have come into really good agreement that this is going to be a very close call, if not a landfall, maybe a couple of times along the east coast of Florida, then into Georgia, then into the Carolinas, and then we watch this weird curve, which again does happen on average maybe once in a decade, but we have seen hurricanes do this, doing this sort of recurve thing. But there's the Euro, I mean, really almost identical, and that's why that track is fairly certain that we are going to be dealing with a major hurricane along the east coast of Florida, perhaps for a period of 60 hours, and that's 200 to 300 miles along the coast, which again could be catastrophic. And that's why Rick Scott is using the dire language that he is using.
Absolutely. And we hadn't really heard that language since Sandy. I mean, the storm will kill you if you don't get off the beach. Language, it's very strong. Talk with me about the width of the storm. You talked about the distance of more than 200 miles, and that is frightening, but the width of the storm.
So the hurricane force winds, the Category 4 hurricane force winds stretch about 30 miles from the center of the storm. The tropical storm force miles stretch about 160 miles from the center of the storm. So, you know, you're talking about a 300, 400 mile wide storm.
And Janice, it's Sandra Smith. Obviously, the governor is telling residents of Florida to prepare for the worst here. What's the best case scenario? I mean, so even if we don't see it make landfall, what does a good scenario look like, considering the winds that we're seing right now?
The good scenario is more of, you know, an offshore, way offshore hurricane that doesn't bring those, you know, those tightly packed winds in the core, the center of the storm, which, you know, are 140 mile per hour sustained winds. That stretches for 20 miles away from the center of the storm, that very calm area of the storm. So if that stays off like 50 miles off the shore, then you know, we're in better shape. But all of the reliable forecast models are showing, you know, if not a very close landfall, just a scrape along the coast of those hurricane force winds, which of course is the worst case scenario. And listen, I will be the first one to tell you, I hope that we're wrong. I hope tomorrow people are mad at us. But we have to err on the side of caution and, you know, prepare for the worst.
All right, Janice. Well, the governor urging residents get out now. This storm could kill you. All right, Janice Dean, thank you. We'll keep an eye on it for you. Obviously, the top news at this hour. Right now, nearly 2 million people are under evacuation orders in Florida, Georgia, and the Carolinas as Hurricane Matthew takes aim at the U.S. Leland Vitter is live in Daytona Shores, Florida, with the very latest there. What are you seeing, Leland?
Well, Sandra, if you just looked behind me, you'd be forgiven if you thought it was simply a windy day on Daytona Beach with some surf coming in and the sun out. And then as Greg Gursky pans around, you will see what Matthew is bringing. Not only the high winds, not only the heavy waves, but that very black, ominous cloud that is headed our way here. And as we look at the Atlantic, it has really kicked up since we got here this morning. And I wouldn't say there is a sense of panic in this community, but there is certainly a sense of urgency after hearing what Governor Rick Scott and others said about this storm. The main concern on these barrier islands is, of course, the storm surge. The water rising up here will come over the boardwalk, and then the waves will crash here into these businesses here along Atlantic Avenue. And you see all the windows boarded up, the sandbags, those kinds of things. That extends a couple of blocks in. All of the hotels here have closed their doors. They have boarded up, and they have kicked simply everybody out. There's a couple of million people all up and down the Atlantic coastline under evacuation orders. What does that mean? That means the police are saying, if you stay, we're not going to come help you. And that's exactly the message from the Daytona Beach police. At about 8 p.m. sundown, they're going to close the bridges so no one can come onto the islands. Police officers will begin working 20-hour shifts as they begin to try and secure this city. And a lot of police say that they're worried they may not even be able to get around this city because of how high the storm surge could be washing over the barrier islands here. Fuel is very scarce if you can find it at all. Most of the gas stations we've been to, the pumps are simply wrapped up in plastic and people have gone home. Food, we were able to find food a little bit earlier, but right now, those even as far inland as Orlando, which is 40 miles off the coast, are being told that they need to be able to shelter in place, to hunker down in their houses for 3 days. If you get to a shelter, which they have now opened earlier, folks are being told there may not be food, there may not be water, you have to bring your own. Sandbagging operations shut down at 3 o'clock, and by sundown, the police are saying they simply want everybody off the roads because of how much worse this storm is going to get. And as Janice was saying, it could last 24 or so hours here, that they're wanting people to stay inside, and then comes the cleanup. We know Florida Power and Light has already brought in thousands of employees. They're staged all over in hotels around this area, ready to work when the storm passes. As for preparations, do you get a sense that people are prepared? You certainly do. But things that people are worried about here specifically is this issue that it's been 10 years since there was a major hurricane to hit Florida, certainly a long time since one has hit right here. And not only have people become a bit complacent because there's been those false alarms, also the other issue they're dealing with, ladies, is that there's been so many people who have moved here in the past 10 years, they just don't understand the power of these storms. They look out, they see this, they're like these folks down here who've been taking selfies and those kinds of things and say, we'll ride the storm out. And by the time they realize how bad it can get, it is certainly too late.
I got to tell you, Leland, it makes me a little nervous to hear you say that you don't see panic from the residents there. The governor basically said you don't want this to be a I didn't know it was going to be this bad sort of moment. As far as preparations, you said that the gas is running out, the store shelves still look plentiful. Are you getting the sense that these are people who are saying, you know what, we're going to ride this one out, or are they expecting this could be the big one?
Well, there's certainly a couple of different camps here, and there's a lot of folks we met at the grocery store who were saying, hey, it's going to be a hurricane party, we're going to stock up, we've ridden these things out before. There's a lot of folks who are saying they're leaving, and the vast majority of folks, you have to think, have headed out of town. And you think about hotels all the way in Fort Myers, which is 5-6 hours away from here, are already filled up with evacuees. So there is a lot of people who have heeded those warnings, and then there's others who said, look, you know, we've been through this before, we're going to stick around, and then you have to see what happens. And it's a sad case, certainly. And then you have to think about the police and the first responders who end up sticking around as well, because that's their job. And oftentimes they're put in great peril when these folks call 911 once it's too late. And then it's sort of a real question. Can these police officers or firefighters get to them in time to rescue them? Can they get to them without putting their lives in too much danger? But you do get a sense, and from covering these before and from living down here for a couple of years, you do get a sense that people are taking this one a lot more seriously. And those really stark warnings that we heard from Governor Scott, and also we've heard from local officials as they speak on local television, they really tend to show you that this is a very different storm, and people seem to be sensing that urgency. And important not to panic. That's how you have car wrecks like we had a pile up earlier today and those kinds of things. But you do get a sense of urgency now. It's 12:15 here. You figure sundown is about 8 o'clock, which is when everybody wants to be inside.
All right, we will absolutely hope for the best. Leland Vitter from Daytona Shores, Florida, thank you. Be safe.
Well, one thing that was really ominous there was exactly what the storm was already doing. I mean, it was churning, and we know where it's been. And before the show, we were pulling pictures, one in particular of Haiti. Now, look, we know that that was an earthquake-ridden area, and that many of the people were in structures that might be weakened But my goodness gracious, when you talk about a storm that's flattened the landscape, you look at Haiti and it just breaks your heart. You know that more than 65 people that they know of at this point have perished in this, and where they will go and where they have been for the last couple of days, those were the big questions, because as you heard Janice Dean saying earlier, the hallmark of the storm early on was that it was very slow moving and that it sat for a long time. And it wasn't just the winds, it was the rain, it was the inundation of water that left these people so stricken by the storm. It is faster moving now, and it has picked up so much power, Category 4. We'll continue to watch it here, obviously, tracking Hurricane Matthew, bring you the updates this hour as they happen and all through the day. So stay close to your television, your mobile devices. Fox News has you covered. Also moving on to politics this hour, Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump set to face off in their next debate in just 3 days. How are they getting ready for this one? What we can expect. Stay close. Fox News alert as we continue to cover Hurricane Matthew. We will be getting on to politics, but we want you to know that we are on this right now, and you can see remnants of the storm already moving in to Florida's coastline. Millions of people have been moved out of the way, and the governor of Florida is hoping that many more who remain behind are going to heed the warnings and get away from this beast that's formed now into a Category 4. We'll stay on the story for you. We can tell you that it's upwards to 200 to 300 miles wide, that its path could be 200 to 300 miles moving up the coast. But we're on it. So here we are, here on Outnumbered, telling you exactly what's happening with the storm. And as things happen and change, we'll bring it to you. Sandra?
We turn now to presidential politics with the next debate just, count it, 3 days away. Donald Trump's campaign adding a last-minute town hall in New Hampshire to his schedule tonight, allowing him to get a little extra practice for the type of debate he'll face against Hillary Clinton on Sunday. This as the GOP nominee is said to be getting help from Chris Christie, a town hall veteran, and Mr. Trump's allies and staffers reportedly urging him to emulate Mike Pence's debate style from the other night. Speaking of his running mate, the candidate heaping praise on Pence's performance.
Mike Pence did an incredible job, and I'm getting a lot of credit because that's really my first so-called choice. That was my first hire, as we would say in Las Vegas. He's a good one. He was phenomenal. He was cool. He was smart. He was, I mean, you just take a look at him. He was meant to be doing what he's doing.
Meantime, as she did before the first debate, Hillary Clinton carving time with her campaign schedule to prepare. Today, she's off the campaign trail. All right, I want to go to Charlie Hurt first because we are 3 days away, and this is going to be yet another big moment in this election. What do you expect?
Well, I hope that Donald Trump has spent this time preparing because he needs to. The first performance was it wasn't his best, but I have to say that I think the media sort of has overplayed how bad it was, and what we're seeing in the polls, the drop off has largely been because of the overwhelmingly negative, and I think in an unwarranted level.
And one of the criticisms, Megyn, even coming from his supporters, was get off of what you don't want to talk about, pivot and talk about what you do want to talk about, which he sort of struggled with, many agree, on that first debate. You have a lot of experience with town halls. How should he be preparing?
Yeah, I mean, I geek out over political town halls. It's one of the oldest forms of democracy in the United States because you have to face-to-face answer any question you want from your constituents. And unlike some people in the media, there's no bias. There's no press secretary that's going to be able to, like, meander things the way you want. You know this. Your husband does it. This is the one part that makes me uncomfortable about Donald Trump not having traditional political experience. I had a woman on my radio show yesterday who said, this is what I want. I want a woman to go up to Donald Trump and ask Sunday night, do you think I'm fat? And that question, something like that could come from anyone, could change the election. So I'm looking forward to it. That being said, Hillary Clinton's going to have to actually be a human and have a real response, and she's not good at this either. So I'm really looking forward to Sunday.
All right. And his strategy the first time, Rachel, was not so much a preparation. Should he be preparing more or differently this time?
Absolutely, because I think when you have a question from real people, they want real answers, and you can't dance around. Really, he has to sit down and learn how to, the policy. I think the personality he's going to win on, because I think she's very wooden, she's very rehearsed. It comes off as very phony. I think, in that SNL clip, it was so funny when this weekend when she said, "My human father." I think there's something there about her where she's so over-rehearsed and sort of talking pointish, and I think people are kind of over talking points, and I think they like the real talk he gives, but he has to have some substance to it, and he has to prove that he cares even a little bit about policy and digging in.
And as you just heard, he was very complimentary, Harris, of his running mate Mike Pence's performance the other night. Perhaps he's going to learn a little bit of his calm, cool, collected style on that stage.
So I hear the word style. I don't think preparation is style. Like, I wish we could get away from those two things being oppositional. It's not that you're being stylish by being off the cuff and not being prepared. That's not a style. And being prepared is not a style. You can do both. You can have your personality and know your stuff and know, as Sandra said, how to pivot when the items come up that you don't want to talk about because you can't win on those. And we all have those things as human beings, that we win on some, not on others. That's not a style. That's what we call winning. That's preparation.
But I think one of the problems for Hillary Clinton is that she's such a preparer, which is something people really like about her. But it does become, if it becomes the sort of thing where it becomes robotic and automatic, which is what people have come to expect from her, it does sort of eat into
Well, it's not the preparation of one-liners. That's the difference.
Exactly.
It's the preparation of knowing your facts,
and that didn't
knowing
work
who you are in your
saw that. It came off as very phony and grating when he had all these canned one-liners.
It's also empathizing with the American public and with your average Joe. And there's some politicians that do this. I'm no longer a fan of Chris Christie, but he did it like an art form. There's some politicians that can do this like poetry. Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton are not those people, which is why Sunday night is going to be so interesting.
Who do you think will come out on top?
I still think Trump. I still think Hillary Clinton can't. She has to focus group what pantsuit she wears, so I think she still has to get
All right. Well, you set it up for us, and you know where to find all the debate coverage that you want. We are all over it this Sunday, wall-to-wall coverage, and, of course, the main event happening at 9 p.m. Eastern right here on FNC. All right, we are tracking that powerful and deadly Hurricane Matthew as it steams closer to the Florida coast. Expected to make landfall just hours from now. We are watching it. Our Fox team is live on the ground with more on this potentially catastrophic storm. And growing questions about whether Bill Clinton is hurting his wife's campaign more than he's helping, his most recent gaffe, and whether he's become too much of a distraction. Growing concerns this hour over a potentially catastrophic storm. We're watching Hurricane Matthew. It has been upgraded to Category 4 as it barrels closer to the United States. Florida Governor Rick Scott warning residents in Matthew's path to get out now. Brian Yennis is live along the Florida coast with the very latest there, where many, many, many people are making preparations for this big storm to potentially make landfall. Brian?
Hi, Sandra. Well, those preparations are coming down to the final hour here as that hurricane comes closer and closer to Florida. Right now, we are in between Sebastian and Vero Beach, just north of West Palm, and the conditions are deteriorating. If we just take a look at this drone we have here, gives you an idea of the beach and the coastline here. The water really starting to pick up, and you can tell by the picture, we've got one of those feeder bands that are starting to come in. This is what we're starting to see all throughout Florida. The water getting rougher, those feeder bands coming in, and the beach kind of eroding there as the conditions get worse and worse. This is a Category 4 major hurricane. At this point, those who are getting supplies need to do so or have done so, because at this point, the conditions are only going to get worse. And when those conditions get worse, the last thing you want to do is be stuck in a car or in the road at any moment when hurricane force winds start going. Right now, some 1.5 million Floridians have been asked to evacuate all along the East Coast. The effects of this storm are from Miami all the way up through Jacksonville. We are talking about major low areas, coastal areas and barrier islands like we are on right now, in mobile homes being asked to evacuate. Leave and leave now. The Governor, Rick Scott, spoke many times today, and he urged people to really pay attention to what could be a catastrophic storm.
This is game day. This is when this is gonna hit. Intercoastal bridges have already been locked down in Palm Beach County. If you're on the East Coast from Palm Beach northwest, you will likely see winds between 100 and 150 miles an hour. Just think about that. 100 to 150 miles per hour. These catastrophic levels can completely wipe out well-built homes and destroy neighborhoods.
Florida Power and Light says some 2.5 million people can be without power when this storm is done come Friday night into Saturday morning. Sandra?
Brian, we've also seen reports today that cruise ships are being turned around, rerouted, obviously away from any of these shorelines and areas. Vero Beach, I know a couple that was vacationing there over the weekend. This is a very popular tourist destination. Have the tourists been able to evacuate? Have they been able to get flights and get out of the area? Are they heeding the warnings?
I spoke to a couple tourists, actually somebody from who's here from Texas, who said, I thought this was just going to be a regular hurricane, and he came down to the beach earlier today and was like, I don't see anybody. People had told him during hurricanes, people usually come out on the beach and kind of enjoy the sights, and when he didn't see anybody, he was scared. So based on what we're hearing on local reports and what we've been talking to, people are starting to realize, and have already realized, this is a major storm. Hotels have bunkered down. We're staying at hotels that have bunkered down. Many people are not staying at them. At this point, many people have either went west, because at this point going north may not be the best idea. The storm is going to be hugging the entire East Coast north. So if you can't go west and you can't bunker down your hotel, the next best bet is to go to a shelter, which is a school usually, or to go to a friend's house, because again, timing is everything, and this storm is coming in now and going to be hitting really hard tonight. We don't want people to get stuck, Sandra.
Brian, Yenis, thank you for braving the elements for us down there at Vero Beach, Florida. Thank you, sir.
No problem.
Well, it is coming in fast. We'll stay on it. Growing questions now about whether former President Bill Clinton is doing more harm than good to his wife's campaign. Mr. Clinton recently criticized Obamacare, calling it the craziest thing in the world. He tried to walk that back. Donald Trump says Mr. Clinton blew it by torching President Obama's signature legislation.
This Bill Clinton, he added, it doesn't make any sense. And that insurance model, it just doesn't work. Oh, can you imagine what was going on? And a big part of her campaign is Obamacare. Big part. And she wants to double up and double down, and she wants it to go. I mean, this woman doesn't know what the hell she's doing.
Well, there have been some other questionable moves along the trail from Hillary Clinton's husband. Remember when he met with Attorney General Loretta Lynch at a Phoenix airport this summer? It happened at the height of the Justice Department's probe into Hillary Clinton's private email server, sparking plenty of negative headlines. And just this past Tuesday, Bill Clinton slammed Bernie Sanders, potentially angering his supporters. It happened when a heckler shouted he couldn't vote for somebody who sends thousands of people to prison, a reference to Mr. Clinton's controversial 1994 crime bill. Here's his reaction.
Wait. I agree. If I had sent millions of your people to prison, or she had, that would be good. Hillary didn't vote for the 94 crime bill, even though Senator Sanders did.
And that Obamacare comment that I mentioned, here it is now.
You've got this crazy system where all of a sudden 25 million more people have health care, and the people are out there busting it sometimes 60 hours a week, wind up with their premiums doubled and their coverage cut in half. It's the craziest thing in the world.
He later said he strongly supported that bill, but added there are problems with it. Okay, I have to come to you. Rachel, you were about to scoot off the couch. You were laughing so hard.
Well, listen, I think this is a sign that, Donald Trump is even impacting Bill Clinton. I mean, he's starting to tell the truth and say things the way people see him. I mean, you don't know middle-class voters if you can't admit that Obamacare is not working for them. And if you don't get it, then you don't get them. And I think what he's doing is he's trying to actually, as unfaithful as he's been in the past, I think he's actually, in this case, he's trying to help her. He's trying to show her that, she doesn't have to tie herself 100% to the Obama legacy. And she's doing that to get black votes. And that's understandable. And she also likes them as surrogates. But to say that Obamacare is great and I'm going to double down on it is not a winner in this election.
Charlie, I saw it kind of a different way. I mean, Mr. Clinton has an opportunity to tack to the middle for Hillary Clinton, his wife, without her actually having to do it.
Meaning that it was
this a trial balloon? Was this on purpose? I mean, he's pretty deft at this.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And maybe that was what he was doing. But the other problem here is, and I agree with you, Rachel, that it's he does feel what he feels people's pain.
Yeah,
and so he obviously is going to say something like that. But the problem the other problem with it is that it also underscores just how different Hillary Clinton is from Bill Clinton as a campaigner. She doesn't feel anybody's pain, and so when he goes off script. But the other thing that I is worth remembering is, let's not forget, in 2008 he was going off script like crazy during that primary, and in South Carolina very well could have. I mean, you could make the argument that he tanked her there, and you know what is that about? What's the undercurrent?
But he just allowed her to have it both ways. Megyn, is what I'm saying.
I mean, listen, I also interpret this a different way. I interpret this as he's not the same Bill Clinton he was in the 90s, even if he's trying to make a push for more moderate Democrats, which do exist, despite what Bernie Sanders and President Obama want you to think. And there's a lot of Democrats that are extremely unhappy with Obamacare. That being said, this is not the medium in which to do it on a stage in front of a massive group of people. I actually am of the mindset that he's maybe trying to subconsciously harm his wife's candidacy, because this is the third or fourth time. It's very strange. This is not the way you can. I mean, I have
to protect his own legacy at the very least.
And as basically this CNN piece exploring whether he's an asset or a distraction from her campaign sums it up. If she can't manage him on the campaign trail, how's a President Hillary Clinton going to manage him in the White House?
But wasn't it great when Donald Trump said, can you imagine what happens when he came home that day? He kind of channeled what we all thought, you know, welcome home. How was your day?
If she goes down in history as the first woman president of the United States of America, what does he go down in history for?
Yeah. Well, he was
the
president
first
a couple
person
of times.
to cheat with an intern.
Right, there we go.
We'll move on.
In the White House.
Yeah, exactly.
We are tracking that huge and deadly storm. Hurricane Matthew is barreling toward Florida, and we could already see at Vero Beach some very dark skies. The winds are already whipping above the levels that they normally do this time of the year on a windy day. The storm is definitely about to arrive in the next few hours. Our forecasters are now saying it could leave severe damage along the southeast coast. It will sit in their vicinity for 60 hours. 60. A monster, a Category 4. And new questions about the influence Hollywood may have on the presidential election. A number of celebrities are coming out in support of Hillary Clinton. I don't know if that's breaking news, but will voters listen to these celebs? Do they ever? We'll talk. Fox News alert. Governor Scott of Florida has said that Hurricane Matthew, as it is now the outer bands moving toward the coast of Florida, you can see things changing already. North Bay Village is what you're looking at right now in Miami-Dade County, Florida. This storm, according to Governor Scott, could have us see the largest evacuations ever in the state of Florida. It potentially is unprecedented, the damage that it could do as it moves in as a Category 4. We know that it's killed people in the Caribbean. It got smaller, and now it's getting bigger, gaining strength and speed as it moves toward the United States, moves on in. The governor has activated now an additional 1,000 National Guard members. So that will bring the total to 2,500 to help with evacuations for those people who've yet to leave and to get people to shelters in the next few hours. This thing is coming. He says that if you go out in the storm, at the height of the storm, it can kill you. We're keeping our eye on it as it happens. Hurricane Matthew.
Growing questions about the influence Hollywood could have on the 2016 race, as numerous celebrities are urging Americans to vote and make their preference clear. Stars like Robert Downey Jr., Don Cheadle, and Martin Sheen appearing in a recent video with this message.
The violence and nasty rhetoric against mankind is unacceptable.
If Trump gets into office,
it will only get worse.
Also, this video featuring celebrities like Anne Hathaway and Leonardo DiCaprio urging Americans to vote for the candidate with progressive values.
You have to suck it up and do it. That's what it means to be an American.
Get out there and register now. If you care about your future, vote.
Ridiculous.
Okay, sorry.
That
was Meghan McCain.
I can't sit through this.
Okay, well, let's look at this. Let's look at this with young people. Do you think this is effective with young people, and do these stars have credibility with them?
No, I mean, if young people only cared about Hollywood celebrities, no Republican would ever get elected to anything ever. The Hollywood hysteria over Donald Trump I find entertaining. God forbid there's someone who's bucking the trend and speaking for anti-establishment Republicans across the country. My biggest problem with this is people in Hollywood, and I lived in Los Angeles for a year and a half, and I know this to be true, they think, I know better than you. Working class American, you may be living an average life and making minimum wage, but let me tell you what's best for you.
So what did she mean? What did Anne Hathaway mean by just suck it up? And what was she saying?
Suck it up and vote for Hillary, even though everyone...
Because it's that difficult?
They have a terrible candidate.
It's a really sad message. But don't you think that this sort of reinforces, I mean, when you get the media lining up behind her, the elites, the Hollywood elites, Wall Street, doesn't this just reinforce Trump's message that it's all of these guys against you, and I'm the rich guy, the only one who gets you?
Yeah, like Megan said, I mean, they invented elitism. And anytime you have these sort of masters of illusion and fantasy world coming out telling us, oh, well, this is how you're going to fix the real world, it's like, get out of here. I think people think it's ridiculous.
I mean, why don't they just tell people to vote?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the crisis point that we have in this country is that people sit home. They sit it out. If they don't like what's happening, they don't go in and go like this. They just don't. It's one of the reasons why Gary Johnson, I mean, even though I feel so bad for him, he didn't know about Aleppo, but I mean, but still, he's still getting a percentage when you look at the four-way race totals in average polling across the country. It's because people they're not really feeling great about either candidate. So tell them to vote, exercise their right,
but
make some choices.
If the question is whether or not they have an effect on young people and their vote, I think absolutely, because there are a lot of young people who this is all they pay attention to. Us Magazine, Us Weekly, the People Magazine. This is what they look at on Facebook, social media. They listen to what these celebrities have to say, despite what their policies are, or even if they know what they are. But I don't know, Leonardo DiCaprio, he's the big climate change guy, right? I mean, he flies around in his private jet all over the world to pass along his climate change message and lives in his mansions all over the world.
And he flies on air, right? I mean, he's not using fuel. Right?
I digress.
The biggest load of hypocrites that exist are Hollywood.
But will it?
Now we got Meghan all worked.
It's just so offensive. I find it offensive, actually.
Annie Hathaway, just suck it up. Vote for Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, just suck it up. Stop watching her crappy movie. Stop watching her terrible movie.
No, it hurts.
Just a smidge more than 4 weeks until Election Day, but Hurricane Matthew is threatening to overshadow the race, really everything in the news cycle, as it barrels closer to the United States, bringing potential devastation. The storm is already causing some serious political maneuvering. We'll explain.
As Hurricane Matthew barrels towards the U.S. with potential to unleash catastrophic damage in the battleground states of Florida and North Carolina, there are now questions about its potential impact on the 2016 race. A short time ago, a Hillary Clinton campaign spokesman saying they are now asking stations in Florida to delay airing their ads on the Weather Channel until after the storm passes. They had originally spent tens of thousands of dollars on ads there, reportedly to coincide with the storm. A Clinton spokesman says the ads accounted for less than 1% of their spending. This comes just over a month after Donald Trump seemed to politically outmaneuver Clinton, touring parts of Louisiana that were devastated by flooding. Clinton did not visit, saying officials asked her to stay away until the situation there had stabilized. You know, I want to go to you first, Charlie. Is it politically sort of gauche to put ads on during a storm in the Weather Channel?
I don't know. It seems to me like I don't get what the big deal is about that, but I do think that for me a bigger deal is when you just simply ignore a place that has been devastated by one of these things, and especially if it sort of underscores this idea that Hillary Clinton is out of touch and doesn't really get what people are going through.
Rachel, what do you think the impact of the storm could be on the election?
Well, I don't. I just want to quick add something about this. I don't think it's gauche. I think it's smart. I think it's politically savvy to go where the viewers are going to be. I think what matters is how they respond. So in the last Louisiana thing, Donald looked strong. And she looked weak, and frankly, the president looked weak. He hadn't even gone out there, so he jumped them on that. I think this is an opportunity for him or her to come out and sound like they're strong and empathetic. And I think at this town hall will be a chance for them to address this situation because it's on the forefront of everybody's mind.
Well, clearly, her camp decided that it didn't look so good because they decided to pull the ads.
Oh, they did.
This was some of the criticism that they were receiving before they made that announcement. This is a spokesperson for the former Florida Governor Jeb Bush. She tweeted out, "This is a colossally huge and unforced error by the Clinton camp. Insensitive and will piss off Floridians." Ooh. Whoa, okay, so that was some of the criticism out there. But for them to pull the ads, they're acknowledging maybe it looked a little insensitive.
Yeah.
That means they're poll testing everything.
Well, I was just going to say, I don't know if they acknowledged that it was insensitive. I think a poll may have told them that it was insensitive.
Like
but whatever, that's just history talking. You know, I guess in terms of this, when you upstage a presidential candidate and a president who reportedly was golfing when the enormous amount of water fell on Baton Rouge, Louisiana, you do kind of get this, I think, reaction like, well, when the next thing happens, we don't want to be standing holding the bag and looking like we don't care. But to plan for an event that hasn't happened yet, unless you're in an evacuation zone, may make you look like you're overreaching. And so, you know, then you get what Sandra's talking about, the pullback. So then the question comes, well, was it genuine or not? I mean, it's just the dog chasing its tail at that point.
Well, I think we can definitely agree that if Donald Trump had done that, he probably would not be pulling the ads. He would, he would double down on it.
With what he had planned. Because it would have come arguably maybe from a not polled place. I don't know. I mean, we don't know for certain, but it's just history tells us that when you see campaigns sort of do this sort of thing. You know, I want to ask you, though, because your dad, the summer leading up to, and correct me if I'm wrong, to the election, we had a lot going on in this country, and he pulled back on a weekend and said, I'm going to focus on the financial mess that this country is in. He got a lot of credit for doing that.
He also canceled the first day and a half of the convention because there was a hurricane, and instead they focused on, you know, clean up and helping the victims.
But he got a lot of credit for doing it. It was positively seen.
I think that no matter what happens, both of these candidates have to take this seriously and have to go down there. You know, God forbid we don't know what's going to happen, and I think, as Rachel pointed out, Donald Trump has already done a better job of this. And again, Hillary Clinton, she can't go down there with a giant group of people with Homa standing behind her with some hand sanitizer looking like she doesn't know what's going on. And that's a risk for her. I'm sorry, I just have no more patience for it.
We haven't seen what will happen yet.
Okay, we will, of course, continue to track the hurricane and bring you the very latest on this huge storm as it speeds towards the southeast coast.
Charlie Hurt, so great to have you along. We've got
Thank
a
you for
lot of
having
big
me.
news happening, and politics is some of it, and they may merge this weekend with Hurricane
I think
Matthew.
without a doubt they will.
Yeah, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to stay right here for Outnumbered Overtime. OT, baby, on the web, foxnews.com/outnumbered. He loves when I do that. Tap on the Overtime tab or Facebook Live, happening now.